Good evening, everyone, to Canyon City Planning Commission, Wednesday, October 27th, 2021. I now call this meeting to order. Will you guys join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Hi, Denise, will you please call roll?
Good evening, I sure will. Chairman Maloney,
Here?
Commissioner Clark,
Here.
Commissioner Clement,
Here.
Commissioner Ledoux,
Here.
Commissioner Moss,
Here.
Commissioner Souther,
Here.
and Commissioner Randy Smith.
Here.
Thank you, Denise. Item number 3, I now ask for approval of the minutes from the August 25th, 2021 regular meeting. Did anyone have any corrections to the minutes from August 25th? Okay, hearing none, I need a motion and a second to approve, please.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you, sir.
Second.
We have a second. Commissioner Souther. Denise, please call roll.
Commissioner Clark,
Aye.
Commissioner Souther,
Aye.
Chairman Maloney,
Aye.
Commissioner Clement,
Aye.
Commissioner Ledoux,
Aye.
Commissioner Moss,
Aye.
Commissioner Smith.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. So before we get into our agenda here, I just want to make sure if whatever item you guys are here to talk about, we fill these out and we go in order as received. The other thing I wanted to say is we're not talking about any ballot issues tonight. We're just simply talking about zoning and whether that fits into the Canyon City Master Plan. So the item I'm guessing everyone here to talk about is the last item. So if you're going to sit through the entire meeting, great. I just want you to know we're not talking about any ballot issues tonight, particularly. So just keep that in mind. And we will have 3 minutes on the timer. So when you get up to the podium to talk, when that 3 minutes is up, I'm going to ask you to wrap it up. Thanks, everyone. It's good to see everyone. We don't usually have a planning commission meeting like this, so it's kind of cool. Okay, item 4A, special review use, multifamily residential at 422 Macon Avenue, case number SRU 2021-005. The applicants are James Hughes, the owner, and Lester Limon as consultant. Location, Macon Avenue, approximately 88 feet west of the intersection of Macon Avenue and 5th Street. I now open this public hearing. The provisions of the City Municipal Code and in particular Title 17 thereof, the subdivision regulations, and the comprehensive plan of the City of Canyon City are incorporated into the record of the hearing as if set forth verbatim. Patrick, can we please have a staff report?
Certainly. Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the Planning Commission. This evening we are conducting a public hearing on a request for approval of a special review use to allow multifamily residential as the principal use of a property located at 422 Macon Avenue. This is a continued public hearing due to the lack of a quorum at the September 22nd Planning Commission. This was automatically moved to tonight. That is why it is also first on the agenda. It should be noted that this is the final project to be processed under the city's previous Title 17 zoning code. The subject property is located on the north side of Macon Avenue, on the south side of Macon Avenue, approximately 88 feet west of the intersection of North 5th Street and Macon. This property was part of the original incorporation of Canyon City, and according to the Fremont County Assessor's Office, the structure on site has an effective build date of 1960. The property is approximately 5,227 square feet in area, which is consistent with the lot size for most parcels in the vicinity of Main Street. The existing structure on site appears to contain 6,826 square feet of area between 2 above-ground floors and a basement, and the building footprint covers almost all of the lot. The property has 2 previously approved special review uses, a 2002 approval that allowed for motorcycle sales, and a 2006 approval that allowed for a training facility as defined in the old Title 17. Training facility specifically means a school for special instruction in artistic or practical or professional skills, including but not limited to art, dancing, gymnastics, archery, or martial arts. Staff recommends that if the multifamily residential use as principal use of the property is approved, these two previous special review uses must be abandoned by the property owner as they would be incompatible with the residential character they're going for. In the CB Central Business District Commercial Zone, it is intended to be primarily non-residential in nature. Goal was to activate ground floor spaces for buildings in the CB zone to have retail or restaurant-type uses, and residential uses to be above the ground floor. This is particularly applicable to Main Street. 422 Main Street is located on the next block over from Main. The existing uses in the 400 block of Macon include offices and medical offices, professional and personal services, and age-restricted multifamily residential, which means not only is there a precedent for multifamily residential in the areas within the CB zone off Main Street, good planning principles would recommend having a resident population in or near to the Main Street area in order to support more retail and restaurant-oriented uses on Main Street. Because this project was submitted August 6, 2021, it precedes formal adoption of the new Unified Development Code, which means it falls under the previous Title 17 provisions in which no use, including residential, was required to provide off-street parking in the CB Central Business District Zone. This particular property, with a building footprint covering almost all of the lot, cannot reasonably accommodate any off-street parking. The applicant will address this further, but it is a goal of this project to not only seek tenants who will be more pedestrian in their commuting habits, but will also have peak parking demand for the apartment uses in the evening hours, not conflict with the peak parking demand for the commercial uses around it during the daytime hours. And with that, the special review use evaluation is defined in the old code under section 1724030B. Special review uses are evaluated against 6 criteria ranging from size and location to traffic generation to parking to buffering to the potential to generate nuisance conditions upon neighbors. Staff has evaluated this request to allow multifamily residential as the principal use of the CB zone district against those 6 criteria and found that the proposed use will be harmonious with the scale and character of the particular neighborhood and will not create land use conflicts for surrounding properties. Additionally, the CB zone district disallows lack of parking to be a consideration for special review use. Staff therefore recommends that the Planning Commission cite the 4 findings of fact as listed on page 6 of the staff report as evidence of the city's jurisdiction to conduct a public hearing on this request. Staff also recommends that Planning Commission recommend City Council approve the proposed special review use for multifamily residential at 422 Macon Avenue with a resolution that would also abandon the 2 previously approved special review uses. That would conclude staff's report. As always, I'm happy to answer any questions Planning Commission may have. Present to speak on behalf of this project is the architect, Lester Limon.
Thanks, Patrick. Well, let's start with questions of staff from the commission. Do we have any questions for Patrick? No? Mr. Limon, would you like to come up and do you have anything to add?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I'm Lester Limon, P3 Communities here in Canyon City, owner's representative this evening. And I don't necessarily have anything left to add. Patrick did a very good job in presenting the project as it's currently planned. And I stand for any questions you might have, and I will remain for this agenda item should any arise after I leave the podium.
Okay, thanks. Hang on a second.
Certainly.
Does the commission have any questions for the applicant's representative tonight? Yes.
I know that parking was going to be an issue, and it sounded like maybe you had a plan on how you were going to address the parking.
Well, we identify it in 2 ways, and Patrick alluded to both of them. First of all, we're looking for a more pedestrian use or a pedestrian residential use that would take advantage of its proximity to Main Street. But we also recognize that a residential use versus a business use, which is other uses around it during the day, are generally not in conflict with one another. We all go to work, or we all go shopping during the day, or we go to appointments during the day. One would assume that this residential use would do the exact same thing. So anything that, any vehicles that they had on the street at the time would then leave, leaving those vacant for daytime uses. And then, again, they would cross paths again in the evening. But again, like you said, also, there's no provision for off-street parking. There's nothing in the rear of the facility right now, off of the alley. And any parking that we might be able to pull off of Macon would then be in the sidewalk right-of-way, which of course we can't cross. Or we can cross, but we can't inhabit.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes. Commissioner Souther.
The four apartments are going to be on the first floor. Are there any plans for what you're going to do on the second floor?
Second floor is already owner-occupied residential at this case, at this point, and it will have no change
Okay.
of use or change in its remodel, except for maybe furnishings, but
Okay,
no
thank you.
extensive remodel, no.
Thank you.
Okay, any more discussion for the applicant or for staff? Is there anyone in the audience that is here for 422 Macon rezone? No? Okay. Thank you.
Thank
Mr.
you,
Lamont.
Mr. Chairman. Commissioner?
Well, I don't hear any further discussion, so I'll close this public hearing. I need a motion and a second based on the findings of fact, please.
Mr. Chairman, I can make that motion.
Okay.
I move the Planning Commission adopt the four finding of facts regarding the proposed special review use to allow multifamily residential at 422 Macon Avenue.
Thank you.
I can second.
Thank you, Commissioner Smith. Denise, please call roll.
Commissioner Clement,
Aye.
Commissioner Randy Smith,
Aye.
Chairman Maloney,
Aye.
Commissioner Clark,
Aye.
Commissioner Ledoux,
Aye.
Commissioner Moss,
Aye.
Commissioner Souther.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Now I need to call for a motion and a second to recommend approval to City Council, please.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make that recommendation. I move that the Planning Commission recommend that the City Council approve the special review use to establish a multi-family residential at 422 Macon Avenue, and that this approval should abandon the two existing SRUs for the property pertaining to motorcycle sales and training facility.
I'll second that, too.
All right, thank you. Denise, please call roll.
Commissioner Clark,
Aye.
Commissioner Smith,
Aye.
Chairman Maloney,
Aye.
Commissioner Clement,
Aye.
Commissioner Ledoux,
Aye.
Commissioner Moss,
Aye.
Commissioner Souther.
Aye.
All right. Wonderful, moving on. Thank you for showing up, Lester. Item 4B, rezoning Jabernick property at 3040 and 3050 East Main, case number ZON 2021-004. The applicant, Matt Koch, Cornerstone Surveying, and the owner, Celine Jabernick. The location is East Main Street, approximately 1,027 feet west of the intersection of East Main and Steinmeier Avenue. I now open this public hearing. The provisions of the city municipal code and in particular Title 17 thereof, the subdivision regulations and comprehensive plan of the city of Canyon City are incorporated into the record of the hearing as if set forth verbatim. Can we please have a staff report?
Certainly. Mr. Chairman and members of the Planning Commission, our second public hearing this evening is a request by the property owner at 3040 and 3050 East Main Street concerning their request to zone the property to GC General Commercial District. This property is not currently within the incorporated limits of Canyon City. Planning Commission may recall that in 2020, the city revised its annexation procedures to make them consistent with Colorado state statute, not only to simplify the process, but also to mitigate against potential liability associated with deviating from state statute on these areas. Consequently, although there is a pending annexation associated with this project, the annexation will be heard solely by council at its November 1st regular meeting. Planning Commission's role this evening is to consider the zoning component of that request, as all property within Canyon City must, by code, be zoned. The subject property is currently comprised of 2 lots, one addressed as 3040 East Main Street and containing 0.89 acres. The second lot is addressed as 3050 East Main Street and contains 4.03 acres. The lots are situated approximately 1,027 feet west of the intersection of East Main and Steinmeier Avenue. To the east of this site is the Great Western Mini Storage Campus. To the west of this site is the BLM Regional Office and Big O Tire. A modular office exists on the smaller lot. The balance of the site is vacant and undeveloped, but contains 2 zone districts in Fremont County. The smaller property is zoned B Business, while the larger lot is zoned MHP Mobile Home Park. If annexed and zoned, these Fremont County zoning designations would be extinguished in favor of a zone district recognized by the city's municipal code. As Planning Commission will recall, last year Title 16 was amended to make the city's annexation procedures consistent with state statute. This means the annexation request will proceed directly to council for a hearing on November 1st, but the zoning component of this request must be evaluated by Planning Commission, and a recommendation regarding the zoning must be considered by Planning Commission and then forwarded to council. The property owner has requested a zoning of GC General Commercial District as defined in Chapter 1702 and 1703 of the new Unified Development Code. As part of an annexation, all properties must concurrently request a zone district be applied to the subject property. The zoning must be one which is established within the Canyon City Municipal Code, also known as the Unified Development Code. This should not be thought of as a rezoning, since the property has not previously been zoned in Canyon City. Therefore, the 3 criteria applied to rezoning requests in Section 1710.040D are not applicable in this case because it is not technically a rezoning. The GC General Commercial District is the zoning most commonly applied to parcels within the city limits along the East Main Street, US Highway 50 corridor. Indeed, all of the annexations that happened along the East Main Street corridor in the past few years have been zoned GC General Commercial. This includes the Great Western Storage property at 3070 East Main, the NNS subdivision, which houses both the Bureau of Land Management's regional office and Big O Tire, the New Creations Inn property at 2990 East Main, and the Fire District Station Number 3 property at 3010 East Main have all been granted GC General Commercial zoning. Thus, there is an established precedent in applying GC General Commercial at this location. As discussed earlier, there is a distinction to be drawn between a first-time zoning request and a rezoning of a parcel already within the city limits. Zonings happen concurrently with an annexation and are therefore not subject to the criteria used to evaluate rezoning requests. With this in mind, zonings must be considered against the recommendations of the city's comprehensive plan, as well as the precedents the city has established with similar requests along this portion of East Main Street. In June 2021, the city formally adopted a new comprehensive plan. The land use element of that plan acknowledges the East Main Street corridor, including those areas which have already been annexed as priority annexation areas, and recommends these areas as regional commercial. A commercial designation for this property continues the patterns of zonings to be applied to new annexations along this corridor as established over the last decade. 3 annexations in particular were granted the GC General Commercial zoning. The neighboring NNS subdivision, which includes both the Regional Bureau of Land Management and Big O Tire, the Great Western Storage property at 3070 East Main, which was annexed in 2017, and the New Creations Inn at 2990 East Main, which was annexed in 2020, and the Fire District Station Number 3 property at 3010 East Main, which was annexed this past February. Therefore, staff finds the requested GC General Commercial District to not only be consistent with the recommendations of the comprehensive plan, but also the policies established and practices for parcels along the East Main Street corridor. That would conclude the staff, therefore staff has recommended that Planning Commission, on this matter, staff recommends Planning Commission cite the 4 findings of fact on the zoning request as stated in Section 6 of the staff report. Staff further recommends that Planning Commission recommend that City Council approve the zoning request for the Javernick property to GC General Commercial District. That would conclude the staff report. As always, I'm happy to answer any questions Planning Commission may have. I believe Matt Koch, the surveyor who drew up the zoning and annexation maps, is here to speak on behalf of the project as well.
Thank you, Patrick. Are there any questions from the commission for staff?
Matt didn't make it.
Okay.
Oh, hi.
Hi, I'm Jim Javernick. Matt had something else come up. He asked me to come if you have any questions.
Okay, do you have anything to add? We can, okay.
No, pretty much we want to join the city and go for it.
All right, wonderful. All right, so does the commission have any questions for staff and/or the applicant at this time?
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, any further discussion? You guys are quiet. All right, I'm going to close this public hearing. I need a motion and a second based on the findings of fact, please.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move that the Planning Commission adopt the 4 findings of fact as stated in the staff report.
Let me hold off 1 second.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I
No
thought
problem.
someone had put requests in here. Sorry, 1 second. Lauren Miller, are you here? Did you have something to add to, no? Okay, all right. Commissioner Clark, please continue.
I was finished, sir.
Okay, and I need a second then.
Well, I'll second.
Thank you. Denise, please call roll.
Commissioner Clark?
Aye.
Commissioner Smith?
Aye.
Chairman Maloney?
Aye.
Commissioner Clement?
Aye.
Commissioner Ledoux?
Aye.
Commissioner Moss?
Aye.
Commissioner Suther?
Aye.
Thank you, Denise. And now call for a motion and a second to recommend approval to City Council.
I'll do that one. I move that the Planning Commission recommend that the City Council for the City of Canyon City approve the zoning request for Javernick property at 3040 and 3050 East Main Street to GC General Commercial District.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Commissioner Suther. Denise, please call roll.
Commissioner Smith?
Aye.
Commissioner Suther?
Aye.
Chairman Maloney?
Aye.
Commissioner Clark?
Aye.
Commissioner Clement?
Aye.
Commissioner Ledoux?
Aye.
Commissioner Moss?
Aye.
Thank you. Item 4C, rezoning Commons at Canyon City Abbey Plan Development District, case number ZON 2021-003. Applicants Robert T. Koch, Sunshine Financial Services LLC, and Rob Brown, FEDC, owner CV Canyon City LLC. The location is 2951 East US Highway 50, approximately 1,755 feet east of the intersection of North Reynolds and Fremont Drive. I now open this public hearing, in case I didn't already do that. The provisions of the City Municipal Code, and in particular Title 17 thereof, the subdivision regulations, and the comprehensive plan of the City of Canyon City are incorporated into the record of the hearing as if set forth verbatim. Can we please have a staff report?
Certainly. Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Commission, this evening, our final public hearing is a request by the owner of the property at 2951 US Highway 50 to rezone the property from a combination of R1 low-density residential and GC General Commercial District to PDD Planned Development District, being called the Canyon City Commons at the Abbey. The subject property is located, as I said, at 2951 East US Highway 50. Situated on the north side of Highway 50, it is surrounded by developed areas within Canyon City to the west and within unincorporated Fremont County to the east and north, In total, the property is approximately 187 acres in area. The property was annexed in 2004, and upon annexation, it was zoned to have an R1 low-density residential zoning to the north and GC general commercial zoning to the south, with an OPR designation upon a regional detention pond that was dedicated to the city. It should be noted that the boundary separating the R1 portion of the property from the GC portion of the property does not relate itself to any existing physical or natural feature of the site. It is an arbitrary separation, and from this it can be deduced that the intention behind this zoning was to support a mixed-use development as far back as the time it was annexed. Since the closure of the Holy Cross Abbey School and subsequent sale of the property, several uses were introduced to the property and have continued since the annexation. These include a winery, an event center, the Colorado Department of Corrections Training Office, and several other office uses on site. There are also a number of buildings remaining from the property's use as a private parochial school, including most prominent, the monastery building and chapel. The applicant has proposed a rezoning of the property which would extinguish the existing R1 and GC zoning to a customized form of zoning called a planned development district. This is as allowed in Chapter 17.8 of the Unified Development Code. In this type of zoning, the applicant creates a map called a development plan, which identifies a number of internal land use areas. The applicant's proposal creates 25 planning areas within the site, each with its own set of height, bulk, and use characteristics. Of these planning areas, 13 are devoted to residential use on a scale of density. Beginning at the low end, planning areas 21 and 23 are estate homes, which are large lot residential. PA 23 proposes a maximum of 16 dwelling units on 17 acres for a density of 0.94 dwelling units per acre. And PA 21 proposes 13 dwelling units on 5 acres for a density of 2.60 dwelling units per acre. Planning areas 10, 16, and 18 are proposed as village homes, which are more moderately sized lots. The PAs 10 and 18 each comprise a maximum of 25 dwelling units on 12 acres for a density of 2.08 dwelling units per acre. PA 16 proposes 21 dwelling units on 8 acres for a density of 2.63 dwelling units per acre. Planning areas 6, 8, and 12 comprise what's known as the missing middle residential. The term was coined in a 2019 Upper Arkansas Area Council of Governments Housing Needs Assessment for Fremont County. These are intended as dwellings for young professionals. Planning Area 6 proposes a maximum of 35 dwelling units on 5 acres for a density of 7 dwelling units per acre. Planning Area 8 proposes a maximum of 35 dwelling units on 2 acres for a density of 17.5 dwelling units per acre. And Planning Area 12 proposes 45 dwelling units on 2 acres for a density of 22.5 dwelling units per acre. Planning Area 9 proposes age-restricted senior Planning Area 17 proposes row house-style townhome concept with a maximum of 125 dwelling units on 12 acres for a density of 7.63 dwelling units per acre. Planning Area 9 proposes senior housing. These would be apartment-style units, age-restricted in their entry, with a maximum of 72 dwelling units on 2 acres for a density of 36 dwelling units per acre. And finally, Planning Areas 7 and 19 propose apartments. PA 19 proposes a maximum of 200 apartment units on 4 acres with a density of 50 dwelling units per acre, while Planning Area 7 proposes a maximum of 195 apartments on 3 acres for a maximum density of 65 dwelling units per acre. Now, in summary, this is a total of 93 acres that are proposed for residential uses on property. All of this would be primarily in the northerly half of the property, which would be relatively consistent with what the R1 zone currently shows, but is in fact more tailored. Certainly some of these densities will not be supported by the R1 zone district. The applicant has also proposed 12 planning areas for non-residential uses. Planning Area 1 is proposed as a mixed-use retail on 8 acres and is intended to serve as a location for an anchor tenant and a number of smaller retailers as a typical neighborhood to regional shopping center in scope. Planning areas 2 and 25 along the southerly boundary of the property are designated for the existing Abbey Winery and a commercial agricultural area. Planning Area 2 is proposed at 12 acres and Planning Area 25 is proposed at 18 for a combined total of 30 acres. It should be noted that both of these parcels are impacted by floodplain along their southerly boundary, so these land use designations will not trigger the need for floodplain map amendments. Planning areas 4 and 20 are designated as historic commercial and office. The historic commercial area includes the monastery and chapel building as well as the existing DOC offices, but adds for provisions for other kinds of office and hotel uses. Planning Area 20 is designated as office space only. Planning Area 5 encompasses the existing event center and makes allowances for expansion of the event center. Planning Area 14 is a 10-acre site set aside for a future rec center. That's located predominantly in the middle of the property. And finally, Planning Areas 11 and 24 are designated as open space areas. Planning Area 24 represents the existing regional detention pond and an expansion area to accommodate additional runoff as the Abbey property develops. Planning Area 11 includes the existing cemetery on site and establishes a new park adjacent to the senior housing area, as well as apartments, missing middle homes, and single-family residential. The other component associated with a planned development district is a set of written instructions which provide use standards as well as height and setback limitations for each of the planning areas established on the plan. It can also include certain design provisions such as staggered front yard setbacks in residential areas or requirements for landscape features above what the Unified Development Code might require. The regulations contained within the development guide are specifically tailored to the Canyon City Commons at the Abbey Plan development. These regulations are not applicable anywhere else in the city and are what distinguish a planned development from a standard code-defined zone district such as R1 or general commercial. Although the development guide, as proposed, functions well to create the standards for each of the 25 internal land use areas, there are, written into the plan currently, some grammatical errors, spelling corrections, and math errors which must be corrected in the development guide before it could be recorded and become incumbent upon the land. These corrections are noted in an attachment to the staff report. The city's comprehensive plan update, picture Canyon City 2040, was finalized earlier this year and formally adopted by resolution of council upon recommendation from the Planning Commission. This policy recommending tool includes a land use plan. The comprehensive plan's land use recommendations for the Abbey property specify a mixture of uses for the property. These include residential in varying densities, commercial office and commercial retail, open space areas as well as recreational areas, and public, semi-public uses, including governmental offices and facilities. The proposed planned development appears to be consistent with these recommendations. The city's Unified Development Code, Section 1710.040D, specifies 4 criteria against which rezoning requests are to be evaluated. A, the proposed rezoning is consistent with the comprehensive plan. B, there have been significant changes in the area to warrant a zoning change. C, the zoning is consistent with the purpose statement of the proposed zoning district. Or D, there was an error in establishing the current zoning. Any one of these criteria being satisfied is enough to make a finding that the rezoning is warranted. Staff believes that all 4 of these criteria are satisfied. In addition to the comprehensive plan consistency, The purpose statement of the PDD zone, as stated in Chapter 1708 of the UDC, reads as follows. In order to establish an alternate zoning procedure under which land can be developed or redeveloped with innovation, imagination, and creative architectural design, when sufficiently justified under the provisions of this Unified Development Code, the plan development processes are intended to permit and encourage such flexibility. The proposal meets that purpose statement. Additionally, the criteria pertaining to changes in the area, it should be noted that this section of the city, on both sides of US Highway 50, has seen a great deal of commercial growth, and the demand for that growth has not slowed. Finally, on the subject of an error in the existing zoning, as was pointed out earlier in this presentation, the existing combination of an R1 and GC general commercial would share a border that has no relation to an existing physical or natural feature of the site. The inference is that this property was always intended to be mixed use, and the R1 GC combination was effectively a bookmark zoning put in place until a more detailed concept could be established. With that, staff recommends that the Planning Commission, following a public hearing on this request, cite the 4 findings of fact as a certification of Planning Commission's jurisdiction to act on the rezoning request for the Abbey property at 2951 US Highway 50. Staff also recommends that Planning Commission recommend that City Council approve the planning request for the Planned Development District known as the Canyon City Commons at the Abbey. That would conclude the staff presentation. As always, I'm happy to answer any questions that Planning Commission may have. I believe Rob Brown of the Fremont Economic Development Corporation is here to speak on behalf of the potential purchaser of the property.
All right, thank you very much. Start with questions from the commission.
You go
We got 2.
Patrick, when I was reading through it, the missing middle residential is not defined in the guide. In the 2.0 zoning districts, purpose and intent on page 7 and 8 of the application.
Okay?
So I think that needs to be defined there. It is identified in the tables as MM, but there's no definition for it.
Okay?
So hopefully you can include that.
We certainly can, yes. You might make that a condition of approval as well,
Okay.
if it is your intent to improve.
Yes.
Just to clarify, you want to define middle,
Missing middle residential.
missing middle resident? Okay. Commissioner Clark?
Yeah, Patrick, other than Macon Street, along, was it Dozier? And I think it's off Park Avenue. Do we have any other apartment-style residential like this in town?
No, sir.
Okay.
We do not.
Thank you.
I guess I have one. Do you have any statistics as far as what our housing rate is right now, as far as what in Canyon City is? I mean, we're lower than 1% as far as
I
availability?
believe Mr. Stevens may know the answer to that more readily than I do.
Yeah, there was a study that was done by the Upper Arkansas Area Council of Governments looking at vacancy rates, and that study was completed at the end of 2019, and at that point, it was a 1% vacancy rate. Conditions have only gotten worse since then.
Right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from the commission or questions of staff from the commission? Yes.
Patrick, I have a question, just so I understand the process. Tonight, we are voting to change the zoning, so the proposed person that wants to do this development, his next step would be to come and share with the Planning Commission what he wants to do. Then from there, it would go to City Council for them. Is that?
So, yes, ma'am.
Explain the process, please.
Tonight, the Planning Commission is evaluating the zoning proposal that the applicants come forward with, and they are forwarding a recommendation to council. Council will consider this at a public hearing November 1st. If it gets approved, their next step would be the subdivision process. And because of the number of lots that would be involved and the infrastructure that would need to be installed, those would also have to go to subsequent public hearings before both Planning Commission and council. And any major subdivision is going to come along with a requirement for a development improvement agreement that will specify the developer obligations attached to that particular filing that they're working on. And then they would secure those obligations with a letter of credit or a cash deposit, so that in the event of a developer default, the city would be able to finish the work.
And so I know that some of the concerns that have been passed on to you, that you have now passed on to us, was as far as the roads and, traffic and all that. So I'm assuming that that is part of the process that would be identified later on as how to fix all that.
Correct. Traffic studies and traffic impact analysis, as well as an overall drainage master plan, would all be coming as part of the subdivision process.
And I'd like to ask one more question, piggybacking off that. I failed to print that map, and it's hard to read it from here. If I remember, there's 5 entrances and exits off this property onto main streets of some type?
So they are proposing to add some additional connections. One of them will go over to Reynolds Avenue. One of them will potentially connect to Glenmore, although we don't know where. Again, that would be the subject of their subdivision design when that particular filing comes into place. One of them would go north up to Central Avenue. So there would be a fair degree of connectivity that this project would propose to create as it builds out.
Right, okay. Thank you.
Any other questions from commission? No? Good. Rob Brown, would you like to come up and add to the conversation?
Definitely, thank you very much. I have a few notes. I think it might clear up some of the questions that the gallery may have.
Oh,
and
I'm sorry.
commissioners.
Can you
So-
state your name and your affiliation
I will.
for the record, please?
Absolutely. My name is Rob Brown. I'm with FEDC, Fremont Economic Development Corporation. We're a local private, not-for-profit. We exist for the purpose of job creation, business acquisition, business growth, business retention, those types of activities. I happen to be a local resident here. I grew up here, graduated from Canyon City High School, and these things are relevant because this isn't just another zoning application. This is a legacy project, and it is one that I take very personally, so I wanted to make sure that that my background is known so the gallery understands that this isn't just a business transaction to me. I sat on city council. I was on the chamber board. I did 2 terms of the state on their Economic Development Commission, so I've had the opportunity to be a Senate appointee to our state government commission, and those roles, I've learned a lot about the project and the systems and so forth, and think I can bring some additional insight to this project. And then many of you know me as Create Canyon City. We founded Create Canyon City, and we did several balloon festivals right there at the Abbey property. So we know the property inside and out. Stakeholders, the current owner, CV Canyon 11. It's a kind of a simple name, but they inherited the name, but they're from out of state. They ended up with a property as a matter of a set of circumstances, so they never intentionally purchased the property, but ended up with it, and to their credit, they've done a great job of keeping the operations there consistent. They've kept people employed, they've kept the buildings to a minimal standard, and they've done a generally good job. But they can't move forward in a financial situation with a property that isn't performing. It isn't producing revenues in excess of the costs of doing the business. So that's CV Canyon. The developer is a group called Sun and Shine Financial Services. They're out of Chicago. They are a family-run operation. They have an international presence. They have projects all over the United States and internationally. They're extremely well thought of in this industry, and they're very capable of producing the results that we need. And I've traveled to their offices and worked with them many times. Because I'm located here and both of the other principals are located remotely, they've asked me and they've authorized me to be their representative here in Fremont County, and I've gladly accepted that responsibility. And then I think the next most important stakeholder are the citizens of our community. Many of them are represented here, and that's a great situation we need and want that input on the project. So a little bit of history. Mr. Stevens represented the Upper Arkansas Area Council of Governments Housing Study. That was really a stimulus for moving this project forward. Shortly after that, there was a study done by the Urban Land Institute, and that was a collaboration between the City of Canyon City and FEDC to win a grant to bring in a group of professionals from our state that have specific experience in developing projects of all types. They produced a report. It's in your packet. If not, you can have access to it at any time, but it clearly represents the theory and feel and look of this particular project. So you'll see the Urban Land Institute stamp all over the project. Next in line, we were able to go, FEDC was able to go with Fremont County and win the Brownfield, the EPA Brownfield grant. That put $600,000 into our community for the purpose of assessments on EPA standards on property. It's very difficult to sell property if you don't know what the eventual EPA issues are associated with that. This project benefited by having a Phase 1 assessment done and then followed by a Phase 2 assessment. And in being very frank, it discovered many issues on the property, and those issues need to be remediated before the property can be developed. The current owner and the buyer have agreed in principle on how to remediate that, how it will be paid for, how the money will be escrowed to do those things, and they'll be able to push this project forward because that objection has been removed. The EPA, once they spent some time in our fine community here and they looked at that property and other related properties, they said, we have what's referred to as an EPA Design Assistance Grant, and we would like to offer that to your community and actually do a complete design, community development design on this property. So they brought their team together right in the middle of COVID, so they weren't able to travel here as readily, but they did public meetings, they did concept after concept after concept. They did a ton of work to the tune of 6 figures worth of engineering and design work, and it was conducted by a firm that's a national specialist in community development called HDR, based in Omaha, Nebraska. These guys are world class. They came in and they did a ton of the work, and our community benefited, and this project more specifically benefited. So the HDR imprint is all over the package as well. So you have the Urban Land Institute, you have HDR, Design Assistance Grant. Both of those provided the tools that we needed to push the project forward. That combined with the EPA issues being resolved, then we were able to seek out and find a developer. And many people have asked me, have they been properly vetted? Can they pull this off? Do they know what they're doing? Are they capable of doing the project? And the answer, the very simple answer, is yes to all those questions. They're very capable. They're financially capable. They're motivated. They want a legacy project here because of the stage in life that the patriarch of the organization is in. This is the perfect project match for them, and they fully intend to move forward as we go through these steps that have been mentioned. So the project mission has been simple from the beginning, is to redevelop the site to benefit current and future generations. This is a legacy project. This is something that's going to persist for the next 10, 20, 30 years into the future. This is not something that's going to happen overnight. There's 852 rooftops proposed that will have to be lined up, aligned, if you will, with the growth that we expect to see in Fremont County and Canyon City. But this is this commission's opportunity to help push this initiative forward. And then it was mentioned earlier, but we are absolutely in a housing crisis in this area. It's not simply there's not enough houses to go around or enough places for people to live. We are continuously having teachers, first responders, nurses, people that need housing in our area in order to move their families here and become active participants in our economy in areas where we absolutely need them, and they can't move here or they can't stay here because they don't have housing. And so unfortunately, the missing middle definition that was asked about, that was missing, that's exactly the category there. By the way, we made a bunch of typos in there just to make sure you guys were reading it. So thank you very much for drawing those to our attention. And then the final component of this mission, if you will, beyond creating this opportunity, is to have a minimal impact on the neighbors. There is no desire by anybody involved with the project to put roads across somebody's house or cause drainage issues or otherwise damage any of the residents. And all of those issues, and we'll commit to this, all of those issues will be worked out in the major subdivision component of this agreement. And we discovered it right off because we presented this nice plan to staff, and he says, yeah, you got a road going right through my folks' house, right? Well, it wasn't intentional. It was just, this is not an engineered plan yet. This is a concept development stage. We also want to make sure that this is preserving the historic buildings and this cultural significance of the Abbey in our area. It's this view corridor component is very, very important. So when this property was annexed into the city of Canyon City, there was a requirement that said we need to be able to see that monastery from anywhere you are on Highway 50. And so that is a perfect platform to work with that we have included in all the planning, is that we're going to have this view corridor where you continue to see that historic structure, and that's a very important part. You mentioned the floodplain, you mentioned all of these other obstacles that we have, and we've accommodated each of these in the plan. When I was a child growing up here in Canyon City, there used to be fields full of peonies. They used to be able to drive down the road and you'd see all these flowers growing. It was very, very impressive. I can distinctly remember that as a child. We want to have that entire front of this project a commercial agricultural zone that can have a user, an organization, a company that grows flowers, that grows flowering shrubs, that can use that area to do two things. One is create a viable business opportunity for their business, and to create this very unique offset and maintain that view corridor. So that's a very important component of this. Another thing that we're doing in heavy detail are what we call pocket neighborhoods. So in a project of this size, you don't want this giant footprint. What you want are these smaller pocket neighborhoods where you have like housing, like demographics, small dog parks, things like playground equipment and so forth, interdispersed on the entire project. So you're going to have these pocket neighborhoods. It's an important component of this. There's also some historic issues there, the cemetery and the arboretum. Okay, these were things that were invested by generations of people in the community. Those will be maintained. And then the most important part that I want to stress is that we're going to perpetuate all current operations. So this isn't going to be a situation where an organization like FEDC that's all about job creation, and the first thing out of the chute is going to eliminate jobs by closing down operations there at the Abbey and the monastery. So those will be maintained. And in order to accommodate that from a zoning perspective, we created a historic commercial zone that will allow those buildings to have new improved uses, but within the historic structures that we hope to have there and maintain. Of the critiques that I've received on this discussion, many times that's mentioned. What about the historic buildings? Every one of them is in need of major renovation, and the only way that that's ever going to happen is that we have to bring in somebody that has the motivation to take those projects to another level. Current ownership has no motivation, either financially or otherwise, nor should they under their current circumstances. So we need to bring in somebody that's going to take that one on. And then there's a few project factors that I want to mention, and then I'll wrap it up. We understand the water rights that are available with this property. We understand the magnitude. The history of the West is written in water. We understand that component. We've hired professionals in that field on both the water rights side from a legal perspective as well as from an engineering perspective. So we will move forward with great amount of caution, an abundance of caution. We'll work with the local irrigation companies. We'll work with the city of Canyon City to make sure that those water rights are properly maintained. But long term, we want to maintain the entire project. We want a campus feel. We want to use the water on the project for the commercial ag and for the various areas. So that will be maintained. We understand that there is significant infrastructure that'll have to be performed in order to get this done. You'll see that in the major subdivision plan. We also know that this is in an urban renewal area, it's in an opportunity zone area, it's in an enterprise zone area, it's in a hub zone area. We are going to take full advantage of all of the various tools that are available to us to push the project forward. And then the final factor that I wanted to mention is we think it'd be a really great place to have a rec center. We think it would be a wonderful place. But if that were not to happen, if the citizens of this area choose not to move forward with the rec center, this project will continue to move forward. They are separate issues. There's no set of circumstances where one has to happen for the other to happen. It's just part of the deal. And so my final summary is that I think it was mentioned, Commissioner Clement asked about the process, and I think that's important. And I'd like to make sure that I read into the record what our understanding is of this process to make sure that it is said out loud and recorded. The successful completion of the purchaser's development application will occur and redevelopment on the site can begin when the Planning Commission has reviewed and recommended for approval by City Council both the PDD application, which is what we're presenting tonight, and the major subdivision application that will be presented at a future date. So the reason I want to mention this is that if we get the affirmative vote that we hope for, there's not going to be a shovel put in the ground tomorrow. There is a ton of work and a million obstacles that have to be overcome in order to get to that next stage. But that's what we have the engineers in our community to do, and we intend to do that going forward. So those are my comments, and I'm available certainly for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Well done. Hang out for just a second.
Okay.
Does the commission have any questions, comments for Mr. Brown?
Well, I'll go. I've got several.
Okay, I'll do my best.
Some of the comments that I've heard was 4 Mile Ranch has been not necessarily a debacle of sorts, but the plan back in, 2008, 2009, that it was going to be the utmost as far as a residential area, and it's kind of slowed down, if not stopped. And I think it's picked back up around the golf course area. I think people would be concerned that we say this can happen, that we want to go ahead and approve this, that you've got 850 homes, but then what if it doesn't? What if all of a sudden we get into another economic snag, and now it's just sitting out there, and again, we've got another snag project. Here, we have approved several R1s to R2s to 3s and all that, but I've yet to see a lot of housing built, I guess.
Right.
A lot of people have not complained, they have mentioned that their agricultural property is not giving them a profit that it used to, maybe
Right.
50 years ago. There used to be orchards, there used to be livestock, all that. Everybody now wants to build a property. I haven't seen that.
Sure.
Is there any kind of guarantee that this is going to happen?
Absolutely no guarantee. And yeah, I would love to be able to stand in front of the commissioners and with full confidence say that there's absolutely a guarantee that we're going to build 850 houses and here's when it's going to happen. But what I can guarantee is I can guarantee that we've vetted the participants, that we've done all of the appropriate due diligence, that we've created a pathway to make this work successfully, and that we are in a different place than the projects prior that you mentioned were when they got to that point. Everybody knows what happened in 2007, and the housing market just plummeted. I think all indications are that now is the time to address these housing issues. We're seeing an absolute constant flow from the major metro areas into our market. There is no inventory available. So I think we have every reason to believe it'll work, and we are absolutely hopeful that it'll work. But guarantees, it's just impossible. I'd love to be able to do that.
Thank you. I figured that'd be the answer.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, by all means.
If this project does start, do we have a start, and probably it's just going to continue until forever, I would suppose. Is this anything that can give us some startup jobs, I guess? Will it hire some people from Canyon City, Fremont County? Will they have some viable income based on this project?
Those of us that are in the economic development profession here, Ryan Stevens previously, Rick Harmon currently, myself, we have a constant flow of people that are looking for opportunities to bring their business here. We have no standing inventory. We have nowhere to put them. And so we're competing with Pueblo, we're competing with parts of Denver, we're competing with other areas where there are already opportunities for them to take their business. So I think what this is going to do from a business in that side, not the housing side, but the other side, is it's going to create some standing inventory. And I think you probably are aware of FEDC having great success with our profit cluster concept in FEDC Tech Start, FEDC Well Start. We just announced FEDC Ag Start, and we just applied for a grant and have all indications that we're going to be able to start FEDC Trade Start. And these are the types of entities that are going to draw and attract small businesses, startups, and then emerging businesses to a campus like this, because this will be a place where somebody can live there and work there. They can live there and they can ride their bicycle to work. That's the kind of the feel of this campus type environment. So I think we have very good opportunity to foster that type of activity there. And it will be a phased project. And I think that's a critical component. It'll be phased basically from the south to the north. And as these various different pieces come together, then they'll be segregated and managed separately. So what will end up happening is you have a master developer that is applying here, but ultimately there'll be a group of smaller developers that will take on a 25-home subdivision as an example, or a office building as an example. One of the components here, we really like the Department of Corrections training facility, and they have a need for a much more elaborate, a much more capable facility. We've accommodated that kind of growth in the plan. So I think we're attempting to do exactly what you hope to do, which will be create jobs, attract new jobs, and then leverage our lifestyle that we have here in our community for those people that are looking to work virtually or otherwise. And I think they'll all be good fits for this property.
All right. Thank you.
You bet.
I have one more when you're ready.
Commissioner Smith has one more question for you.
Actually, it might be geared more toward Ryan. Everybody hates taxes, the property taxes and all this. With the 850 or so residents and possibly the construction, will that kind of levy our property taxes? Will that help us at all? I mean, will it do anything to, like you said, leverage them across the board?
So, from a property tax standpoint, it would help with bond measures. So school bonds, a potential recreation bond, it could potentially help from that standpoint.
And possibly if the rec center does not pass, then maybe we can get 800 and something residents who are willing to pay the property tax. Then we can get one, huh? Okay, that's it. That's all.
Okay, no speculation here.
I'm not speculating.
All right, any other questions for Mr. Brown from the committee? Yes.
If you don't mind, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Ryan.
Rob, I don't know how much detail you can go into, but can you talk a little bit about the letters of intent and there are next steps and things aligned and what those letters of intent mean for future job growth?
Yeah, what the the developer, to their credit, created very early on a roadmap to their success. And one of the steps along the way was who are the users going to be? In other words, you don't want to go into a project with full speculation of not knowing any of the potential users, or just the hope and pray kind of a strategy. So what they've done is they've actually reached out to certain potential users and put them under the form of a letter of intent, and they all have now in their possession purchase sale agreements, or PSA agreements, which will allow them to actually execute quickly. So once the major subdivision is done, then the property will close with the current owner, and then at that point, these new users will be rolled into their existing spaces. And that is a big tenet of this success for this plan. It's a major platform there. So that speaks to your point. These letters of intent represent many of the existing structures, and then just recently, which this is new information, we were able to come to an agreement with a housing builder that has been interested in our area but hasn't found the perfect property yet, and that is a new letter of intent. So letters of intent, by the way, are non-binding. So that means that they may not happen, but they certainly demonstrate interest, and that is the catalyst to keep the developer moving forward.
All right. Well, thank you, Patrick
welcome.
and Rob, for
Thank
the
you.
presentations.
I appreciate it.
So if there's no other comments from the commission, we'll move into the comments from the audience. I'll call you up in the order I got the request to speak. Please pull those microphones really close to your mouth when you're talking so that we get it all recorded. Please state your name and your address for the record. And like I said, we'll keep it to 3 minutes. John Heston.
Mr. Brown, that was a really good presentation. My name is John Heston. I was raised here in Canyon City. I went to the Abbey for 4 years, and I graduated in 1980. I completed that, then I joined the Navy and became a weapons specialist and operator for 22 years. Me and some other graduates were the proverbial day late and a dollar short here, but we came up with something. The Department of Veterans Affairs has put out that during this 26-year war, 1 million people have served this country. And in this service, if you're a combat vet, PTSD is real. There's 2 treatment centers. There's one in Florida, there's one in California. This would be an incredible place. Equine therapy, music therapy, place to board, bring in professional people, there's more money, there's jobs. These people that are inpatients, they do agriculture, they grow, they do all of this stuff. I would like to say that I have all the specifics, but I don't. But the Department of Veterans Affairs, I'm sure they would unload this in a second. On any given night, there's 53,000 homeless vets, combat vets. Those are the bad kind, all right? Combat vets out there on the streets of America. Why can't they be here too, learning and getting back into the world? I went to one of the programs and it helped out a lot. If you ask me, something like, when was the last time you were in the Middle East? Last night. All right, it's real. And most veterans can tell you that. God, I had 100 more things I wanted to say, and I got a clock ticking down. There's just so much, I see this and it hurts. As a student, to see something that I loved be chopped into pieces, and that's what it's going to be. You're going to have all these tract housing, and it's a great idea, but getting the people to live here in the industry, to jobs, to support it, I don't see it. You know, but I'm not the expert here. Okay, I got 25 seconds. I'll give it to somebody else. Thank you very much, and thanks for letting me speak.
Thank you, Mr. Heston. George Hall. George Hall? Oh, yeah. Please, members, state your name and address for the record. And get close to the microphones.
I was actually hoping to be towards the end, but that's okay. I'm actually at 2951 East Highway 50. I have been there for several years. Finding out about this project was because a sign got posted out in the front There hasn't been anybody come and contacted us or anything in any fashion. That hurts. That is the way they work with everybody. The one thing that I really want to really get in on is I want to let you know and remind you that once you guys change the zoning on this property, is there going to be a process, if it does not go through, that it revermishes back to the existing zoning, or is somebody going to ever be able to de-zone it from what you're doing today? I have concerns about the highway, the access, the drainage. As we know, that will be taking place further down the road. But I think some of them answers really need to be had now before you change the zoning, because can you really go back on the zoning once you approve it? Just a question. We want to know for sure whether they are going to go forward with the project and they are not going to back out on it. I know of 2 projects such as this in the state of Colorado that have went bankrupt and they did not finish. My suggestion to you, since we have already based the price that they're going to be getting at basically $1 million for 10 acres, there's 187 acres, I would say that they should put up some sort of a bond to assure their performance for getting this done, maybe in the response of around 18.7 million. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hull. John Hecker.
My name is John Hecker. I live at 705 Glenmore Road, so this here property is right behind my house. I don't have a big problem with development. I've been in construction for over 40 years. I know how this goes. I built Berry Motor Company out there. I did St. Michael's Church. I did all that. You guys are saying that there's probably no problem with storm sewer. There's a big problem with storm sewer. I live there. I see the water going down. That needs to be brought up, with everything with the storm sewer system and everything else. Another thing I've got is I worked with the 4 Mile Ranch a little bit. They brought the sewer in for 4 Mile Ranch into Canyon City, and it goes back over. Who is going to be developing a new sewer system for all these people who are coming into this town? Are we, you guys say you got water. Is that going to take the water from agricultural, from the people who have the ditch water? How's this going to work? My thing is when you bring a lot of people in, the sewer thing, the water thing, and everything else has a big impact on it. Another impact on this thing coming into town is if you bring in 400 or 500 kids, are you guys building another school? My wife taught over in Florence for years. The Florence School District was supposed to be promised all this money from the prisons that came in. They didn't see nothing. They were promised millions and millions of dollars, and the taxpayers are building the schools. You're running a road to Central where there is schools. So what are you going to do with the impact with the school kids over there? Impacts are coming out to a big thing here. You got a small community, and I've worked in communities like in Colorado Springs and Denver. They're big communities, and they're still having problems. I'm just hoping that somebody in the small community knows how to take care of the community through with the developer and not let the developer take care of the community and you guys on the board and on our city council. City council has the #1 right, I think, and let's get you guys up and running above and make sure that these guys are doing the right things, or we could be in a lot of trouble. I appreciate your time, and thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hecker. Elaine Shirkey.
Okay, my name is Elaine Shirkey. On my little piece of paper, it says that my address is 1706 Pinion Avenue. That's in the county. However, my business is at 2951 East Highway 50 at the Abbey in St. Mary's Hall, number 105. I've been a renter at the Abbey since 2003 with a short hiatus for about 2 years when the Abbey was owned by the Feliori Group, which went fraudulent. And then when the current owner got the Abbey by bankruptcy, they reopened the Abbey, so I was able to re-put my small yoga business there. I am deeply, deeply grateful to the monks, the Benedictines, and the current property owner for providing a place for my small business. The way I found out about this is Mr. Rob Brown was posting the city's sign next to the 30-mile-per-hour speed limit sign there west of the Abbey on the frontage road. He let me know that I could come to the city and get the application and look at it, which I did. I pulled this piece of documentation from there. It was quite a surprise that, first off, being a renter there, we didn't know anything about it. I don't read the local newspaper, hardly listen to the radio, so it's kind of coincidental that I found out about it this way. And I appreciate Rob telling me that I could come to the city, find out about it. So I called Patrick Mulready. I say your name wrong. I don't know who you are, but I know that you're the zoning and planning director for the city of Canyon City. And in a phone call, when I called him up to find out what a planned development district is, he told me that a planned development district relies on a customized zone development, that the developer gets to create their own regulations, the standard being the Unified Development Code to compare their standards against, as it is the most efficient system for the developer to develop a piece of property. If you look at this document, and you've had it up here a couple times, there is a space in here where there's a bunch of red lines around pieces, and what Rob pointed out too is that what the Schonstein, I don't say their name right, Financial Services will likely do is chop this up in little pieces and sell it off to the highest bidder. That increases the amount of developers you're going to have to deal with. My new next door neighbor, who's a former developer up in Larimer County, has pointed out to me that once the city allows this sort of zoning, they lose almost all their authority over the developer and the developers that would potentially develop this property. And I understand Rob Brown here in town has a good reputation and that he has vetted these folks, but the community doesn't know him. So what I'd like to see is, I'll echo the veteran that got up here, thank you for your service, sir, is that this place would be most well-used and well-zoned as a place for a profitable working farm, a profitable working retreat center, and a profitable working school. Thank you for listening to me. I really appreciate the job that you do. I know it's a hard thing to do. Thank you very much. See ya.
Thank you very much. Okay, Jeff Baldwin.
Hi, my name is Jeff Baldwin, and I'm here wearing two hats. I live at 320 North Reynolds, so I'm concerned about this as someone backed up to the Abbey property, concerned about property values being affected by this. But also, I'm the provost of Worldview at the Abbey, which is the gap year program in town here. We've brought about 150 Christian students to Canyon City to train and equip them over the course of the last 8 years. And those students have been a light and a blessing to the community. We've put them with rafting companies. They've become interns at churches or youth pastors. A lot of them do go on to college and leave the community, but we still have about a dozen who have stayed and invested in Canyon City. And Worldview at the Abbey is right there at 2951. We're in Headley, and I guess if I'm allowed to ask direct questions, one question I'd like to ask is, what happens to Headley House in the plan?
Yeah, but can you step up to the podium?
Sorry.
Yeah, Rob Brown, FEDC. The Headley Hall and all of the other structures there that are considered part of that historic platform will be in the historic commercial district, and the recommendation would be for all of those to stay in place. Obviously, some of them are in poor shape, and there's going to have to be renovations and so forth done, but as I mentioned many times during my presentation, that the goal is to maintain all existing operations, including yours. Because it's extremely valuable to our community to have these people visit from outside the area with the community and provide that additional diversity. So absolutely, we want to maintain that.
And then while you're still here, this is just a rumor that I'd like addressed as well. I was told that 308 North Reynolds was sold, and that was where the road was going in, which is the property immediately to the south of our property.
Yeah, the owners of that property did approach Sun and Shine and asked them if they would purchase that property for that purpose. Sun and Shine declined the offer because it was significantly higher than what, more than double what market would be. So that is a rumor, absolutely, not true. Doesn't mean something couldn't happen in the future with a new owner possibly, but.
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Thank you. Yeah, that's pretty much all I wanted to say. I think there's a qualitative aspect to the question, not just the financial aspect. We have, I rent with George, with Elaine, and there are people on the Abbey campus right now that have been there for years doing business and bringing people into the community that are a blessing to the community. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Mr. Baldwin. Next up is Lauren Miller. You're okay? Questions answered? Okay, Lauren, thank you. Paula Shagley?
Good evening.
How are you?
I'm great, thank you. I'm Paula Shagley. I live at 696 North Reynolds, have the little farm of about 3 acres right there in the corner of Reynolds and Pear. And I just have a couple of issues, but first of all, I just wanted to say the Monk Spirit, I really feel this. I worked with them for 10 years, and I was there at the Abbey while they were closing down their program and sold to through the Foliere Group and Yucaipa Corporation. And I just remember their desires was to go ahead and have senior housing back there. They just pictured a really beautiful place for what they felt was really needed was the senior housing and so on. So they ended up selling the farm to us because they were going to downsize and knew that their project was not going to happen. So anyway, I just keep that feeling of spirit with it, and I really liked what the gentleman had talked about, the peaceful serenity that he was probably envisioning. But my questions are, I am picturing a real traffic control problem with thinking of where we live. If you know, the corner of Pear and Reynolds is a very busy place as it is, and we just see multiple accidents possibly happening in that area with the school children, the traffic that happens. We've seen it all there, and they're proposing 100, I believe it is, housing units on the corner of Field and Central. I don't know if that's a rumor, but I have heard that that is a possibility there. So you're going to have a lot of traffic coming onto Central, especially if they use, there's a high density of housing on the northern portion of the Abbey property, and if they have one of the main roads that is coming out of there, I from what I see, they're going to have to do some kind of a bridge or something to go across the arroyo, and then it'll go through the Mennonite properties on Central. So that would be a very heavily used area, and I'm trying to think if there's not another school made to handle all the children. I'm trying to picture what they're going to do about that kind of traffic and the solution at the corner of Field and Central, because it is already backed way up down Field Avenue, around the corner in front of our house during the high traffic times. So that is number one question, is to consider the traffic issues, especially if that other area comes into being. Second of all, if any of you know that area, there is Pear Avenue. If it could continue on, it could have gone straight into the Abbey property. It's just a little dirt road, and we're just wondering if that's going to be a part of the plan, or are they going to shut that off? Because otherwise people will try to come down that dirt road and catch Reynolds instead of doing the whole rest of the area. So that was a question for Rob, that we were wondering, what are they going to do with that dirt road, that little tiny area that goes between the properties? Thank you.
Thanks, Paula. Lisa? Please state your name and your address for the record.
You mean you don't know it? My name is Lisa Hyams, and I live at 3165 Grandview Avenue. I spent my career in real estate in Beverly Hills. I am very familiar with high density. I spent 3 decades there. I also was the director of the Chamber of Commerce, so I am really familiar with the benefits that this could bring to our community. I am very aware of the housing demand that is necessary here, but I will state that this property is a cherished property within the community. I realize that people own this property and they have to be able to make a living off of it, but the high density that has been put out in this proposal is way beyond what Canyon City has for its layout. And I feel that it is way more than we need to be doing. I feel that we need to make great consideration on impervious soil. I feel there's so many things that need to be considered. You have solid houses and you are creating nothing but problems. I really believe there needs to be greater consideration as to the impact this has on our community and the people. The people have feared that something would happen like this with the Abbey for years. And as the director of the Chamber of Commerce, they brought it to my attention. Please, please, please don't let them do this. Obviously, as chamber director, I have no control over that. But I do listen to the people. I listen to the business people, and I listen to our community. And I think that the city as well ought to listen to the people and the community. Because if you want to be able to work with the citizens of this community, you really need to take into consideration their wants and their desires on what's going to happen at this property. I feel respectfully they ought to reconsider and scale back their proposal. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lisa. I have one last request to speak to the commission, and that's Manny Colon. Starting now? No, just kidding.
Yes, my name is Manny Colon. I'm a farmer. I live at 3165 Grandview Avenue, which is out of the city. I did farm the Abbey for 5 years. I am an agricultural person, and because of that, I like open space. And the best thing I can say, several years ago, we started a program called Save the Abbey, and we had lots of people involved and tried to come up with the financial amount of money we needed to purchase that. That kind of fell through. A few years ago, we started it again. I was involved in that. I talked to San Isabel, Palmer Land Grant and Trust, Colorado Cattlemen's Association. We looked at a conservation easement, At that time, the owner of the property had a very high price on it. When we found out that it had been dropped, I went back and started working with it, and GOCO was willing to come in and help us. We found a piece of property in the Fort Collins, Larimer County area that was very similar to the Abbey. I showed them that the amount of water and the land and the value of it was a better deal than that one. That one was ahead of us just one step, and they went ahead and improved it and purchased that property and set it up in a conservation easement, and we missed it just by a little bit. So when I see this happening, I look at what happens with Colorado and why people want to come here. They want to come here to see the open land, our forest, our cattle, and they drive through it and see the open space. If we take this last gym we have and destroy it by putting in high-density housing and whatever, then we've lost something that is really should be proud for not Canyon City, but for Fremont County. And I just hate to see that go that way. If we look at this again, I think there's some people out there on the funding that now, because they dropped the price considerably, we were just a little bit short of making it when this contract was signed. And I understand how real estate works, but we lost out. So from that point of view, I'll take that hat off. That's my personal one. I don't necessarily want another 3 minutes, but I do want to share with the city council. I've been here many times talking about stormwater. Our biggest drainage, which we're aware of, is the one that goes down Rhodes Avenue that comes off of the Abbey and the Abbey Basin stormwater. That drainage has not been taken care of. We go look at the infrastructure that the city has not taken care of, or the county. The hydraulic, I'm representing now the Canyon City Hydraulic Irrigating Ditch Company and the Canyon City Oil Creek Ditch Company. We have had numerous meetings with the city over the stormwater and the county. And in fact, the ditch company, the hydraulic, has filed suit on the city and backed off of it. But I assure you, with the issues that I see, the stormwater that we are draining now goes on a sheeting thing and goes across Highway 50 and goes into the the Cranberry Park area. All those people are in a FEMA zone now. And if you look at the map on FEMA, this water is all coming, condensing, not only on the Abbey drainage, but we're taking that water with the hydraulic ditch and the Oil Creek ditch and moving it from the west to the east through the whole city and finally dumping it out on the very end below the Abbey. And I've got lots of data on that, and so I assure you the ditch companies and our stormwater system is going to have to be looked at, and that is probably the most costly thing that I can see as a danger to this whole project. One thing I did not mention, and that is other people have talked about traffic. I'll leave that one alone. But the Colorado Historical Society, I had them down at the Abbey twice, and they looked at it, and they were very interested. That was during the high value of the Abbey property-wise. I approached them after we saw the price go down, and I know they're very interested too, and there was money there as well as with GOCO. So I'd like to see another chance at maybe working with the developer here and keeping some of this in open space that can be seen mainly from the highway, where they feel that's the highest value property, or maybe the surrounding area, so that we can keep Colorado more of an open space and beautiful.
Thank you, Manny. We appreciate that. Okay. Did you want to speak, ma'am?
May I?
Yes.
For a moment?
Yes.
I was a little late, so I didn't get to sign the list.
That's okay. Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Beth Siegfried. I live at 777 Glenmore Road, right at the very end. And my property borders the Abbey. I love the view. I love the pasture, the cattle. I'd like to ask another question. there's a fairly significant large wild beehive in one of the trees on the opposite side. What'll happen to that? Are they going to be dealt with humanely and moved? In addition to that, I'd like to tell you a quick little story. A friend of my late boyfriend who passed away 4 years ago worked at the Abbey for many years. And he told me one time that they had some sort of a water issue near the cemetery. And they had to get heavy equipment in and do some digging to figure out what the problem was and to correct it. While they were digging, they ran into unmarked graves of some of the monks. And in trying to fix this issue, the water was rushing in so fast that they discovered that some of the remains of these monks didn't even have coffins. They were in sackcloth laid into the ground, and the body started to float. So what I want to know, my impression is that the historic cemetery is not to be touched by the developer. What happens to any of the graves of these monks that served the church and this community for years? What is going to happen to those remains if they're outside the boundary of the cemetery? Things happen. I am under the impression that there are bodies outside the cemetery boundary. So is GPR going to be used to make absolutely sure of this? Is the developer going to be willing to work with the Catholic Church, the Archdiocese of Pueblo, which is, I believe, what Canyon City area falls under, because this is consecrated ground? Are those bodies going to be disinterred and moved? And if so, to where? And at whose cost? Are there going to be environmental impact studies done because of human remains in the ground? And if so, at whose cost? I am horrified by the level of housing that's going to go in here. And I completely agree with Lisa and everything she had to say. I love my house, and I love the view, the Abbey, the property. I understand that progress needs to happen, and we need housing and other things. But I think this is so overdone that it's absolutely shameful.
Thank you. All right. Come on up. Yeah.
John Stock. I'm at 2980 East Main Street. Sorry. So I looked at some numbers over the last 40 years. I think from 1980 through 2020, there's been about 1,000 people added to Canyon City on a decade yearly. So it's about 4,000 per last 40 years. So this being about 2.5 people per dwelling times 850 plus organic growth puts about 3,000 people over the next 10 years. So that's a lot of people over the next 10 years. It's almost as much as for the last 30 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I think that concludes. I knew it wouldn't, but.
I'm really nervous. My name is Augustina Butler. My address is 377 Glenmore Road. My husband and I bought our house about 9 years ago, hoping to raise our children in a quiet neighborhood. And it's been that. It's been a beautiful neighborhood. A lot of elderly neighborhood. It's not just a little neighborhood. We're all a family on Glenmore. We do have a crime rate here in Canyon City with bringing 800 plus homes. That brings more people, which brings more crime. Glenmore Road is a direct path for more crime. We don't have street lights because we are part of the county. Love that. We get our houses broken into, we get our cars broken into. With multifamily homes being right in our backyard, what does that pose for the people of Glenmore? We live there. We're business owners in Canyon City, and this is a huge concern. I don't want to sell my home. I want to raise my children in my home. But if this does happen, a lot of people will be selling their home and moving, and we don't want to. We love Canyon City. This is scary for everybody, especially people of Glenmore. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so now that concludes our questions from the audience, I believe. Patrick, do you have any comments for any of the comments from the audience to address?
So I tried to take some notes. I guess the first comment that I would have is, we heard a number of people say that this property might be better suited for instance, equestrian uses or for therapy uses, for PTSD. I think that's a wonderful idea, but if it were an idea that were being pursued, why is it that since this property was annexed 17 years ago, no one has come forward and done that? I have to react to the application that comes in. This is the application that's come in. It's for a mixed-use development, which, as near as I can ascertain, is what was intended when the property was annexed 17 years ago.
Patrick, you'll have to remember about 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 months ago, we did approve a zoning for a equestrian center off of First Street toward Dawson Ranch. It was like a 3-part series that someone was going to do. So there is a potential for equestrian center going off into Ecology Park. So we're rezoning all the time.
Mm-hmm. And we also have had comments about the amount of residential that's being proposed here is overdone. I can't speak to that. I don't know what the market conditions are for residential growth. I would have to defer to either Rick or Ryan to speak about that adequately. I can only tell you that, again, mixed use tends to mean varying densities of residential, and that's something that they have applied for here.
Well, can I say something to that? This proposal is merely a proposal. The rezoning starts the process, but that process still doesn't move forward until the city council moves on it.
Well, I would concur with that. I would also say that what the zoning does is set a maximum upper limit. What I have typically observed in my years as a planner is that when it comes to an actual subdivision being submitted, the actual number of lots that gets built tends to be significantly less than that, because once you have to start dealing with the grading of the site and how you make that work, once you start dealing with the installation of utilities, the number of lots you can actually create that would sit homes gets reduced. That's just a natural process of what the engineering will require of it. Yes, 852 sounds like a big number. It probably won't be that big in application.
And I'd like to add that this is just the first step in, it's kind of an exploration at this point. And this is a project that I think Mr. Brown said 10, 20, 30 years. I mean, it's not something that we decide on tonight and they start digging holes, like Mr. Brown said. This is really just the first step, in my opinion, is this feasible? And how does city council feel about it? And then when they go into the subdivision hearings and all that, I mean, is it even possible? So just keep that in mind. Go ahead.
Patrick, I just had a couple of questions. Just to address Mr. Manny's concern about the water ditches, I would assume that as construction starts, that would be something that would have to be addressed, and potentially the water ditches could be maybe repaired some if that was necessary.
Again, as part of an overall drainage master study, all of that's going to be examined. And I would also point out that under this plan, they have almost doubled the size of the regional detention pond that exists near the northwest corner of the site. Again, that's to handle developed stormwater flows and at least serve as a way to gather those and have them discharged at historic rates, and then have that discharge properly dealt with. Again, those are all part of subdivision applications that are yet to come.
Right. And then there were a few that mentioned that this was the first time they heard about the hearing was today, when they saw a flyer or something. And I believe that there's a requirement to have a sign posted so many days in advance. So can
Correct.
you explain that process, please?
So there are 3 forms that notice takes. For Planning Commission, the 2 forms of notice that have to be met are a sign posted on property and mailed notices sent to all property owners within a 300-foot radius of the property. For City Council hearing, the 2 forms of notice that have to be met are, again, a sign posted on property and then a publication to the city's website. We've ceased to have these publications done in the newspaper. They are now done via the city's website. All of this has to be done 15 days before the hearing. So the people who's indicated that they saw the sign going up, I would say, well, then the sign appeared to have worked as a form of notice if they stopped to read it.
So the sign had been posted 15 days ago.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. What we can't do is have a back and forth discussion. Everyone's had an opportunity to talk. If you want to have 1 minute, that's fine. Come on up to the podium. Manny, no. Okay. You guys fight it out. 1 minute, which is 1 minute for follow-up comments, and then we'll open it up to Rob Brown, the applicant, if he has anything else to add based on what you guys have been talking about tonight.
I just wanted to comment on the detention pond. The detention pond was originally designed to hold water. It does not have a head gate on the bottom end of it. It has never held any water at all, and all the water, when it storms, runs right through that detention pond and down roads. And it has flooded out numerous people downstream from that. Because of insurance and other issues, if they double the pond, maybe they won't be able to use it properly either. So I can't believe that detention pond is worth anything at all. That's the first thing. The second one is, yes, there was a sign posted, but the ditch companies have never been informed of any of this development.
Okay.
Thanks for letting us come back up. I really appreciate it. One of the things I said to Rob when he was posting the sign, I said, usually those signs are bigger. The margin on the sign is usually about 10 to 12 inches. It had been trimmed down, so the sign is about this big. It's not readily, you have to be looking for it to see it from the thing. The other thing that Patrick told me about too is that historically, public hearings like this were published in the newspaper. And he told me that the standard had been changed September 1st. The preliminary application for this particular project came in September 3rd. And so it seems that the website is public notice, but a public publication is a more public notice. So that's my 2 cents.
Okay, thanks. I can't tell, is there anyone on the Zoom call that had questions? Or is there nobody there? I guess raise your hand if you had something to add before we move on. Mr. Hester, did I get that right? Heston. Okay. I don't see anybody online that has a question.
Mr. Patrick? Sir, what I was talking about was equine therapy for vets, music therapy for vets, psychological therapy for vets. They work. Cut and dry, they just work. I'm not talking about going and having a gymkhana and everyone running horses. Most of these guys have severe anger issues. That's why I have a dog. The dog's not for my protection, it's for other people's protection. Working with animals with these guys, there's 1 million people that served. And out of that, if all these combat vets didn't have some kind of therapy, some lady here talked about crime. It's a whole different kind of crime, sir. What's wrong with doing something right and not worrying about the dollar? You know, leave the property like it is, and I'm just trying to tell you. what I felt.
Thanks, Mr. Hessen. We appreciate your comments. Last but, yes, Mr. Hall.
Yes, I'm going to be very short.
1 minute.
As far as I know, that detention pond, even if it's enlarged, a good percentage of the development is at a lower elevation than what that detention pond is. How is that going to help anybody? Are we pumping water back up to it? Sounds like it. In conclusion, this is just way too high density for what this property needs. If they'd come in at half, a third, you may not have as much problems with it as what you do here. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Harmon, did you want to add anything to the conversation?
Yeah, I guess in a couple respects. Your comment and Rob's comment about 10, 20 years, Canyon City's never done a great job of planning for the future when it comes to housing. In other words, building capacity for housing. We're where we are right now because there's interest in coming here. I was at a meeting today with an entrepreneurial group that's interested in putting on a week-long startup week next year that would attract more people to the community. COVID was a big help in getting people interested in coming here, so people are definitely coming here, but we have not been able to bring them here. And this has been going on for 5+ years. So the prospect of bringing in some additional housing is badly needed, but it's a capacity building thing. I don't think it's anything that's going to happen quickly. I really don't believe it's going to happen quickly because developers will want to plan for the maximum they can possibly plan for to get economies of scale out of a development. Whether they stick with that, I don't know the developers. I'm not involved with them, but they may be able to scale back. But in any case, it probably won't happen very quickly. And again, anything that has to happen for roads, I'll agree that stormwater's always been an issue in this community, and there are some things that need to be taken care of. I'm not an engineer. I'm not going to say how to do that. But from a development perspective, there's interest in coming here. There could be a flow of development coming into this community if we had the ability to put them somewhere, and that includes commercial infrastructure as well. We just don't have it, and it'd be nice to have the opportunity to plan for the future and be able to accommodate the growth that we're going to be experiencing. Whether some people like it or not, the word on the Front Range is that Fremont County is the next growth area in Colorado. We can control that as much as we want to, as much as we can. I don't think we'll ever be a Boulder like people are afraid of becoming. But if we don't have the ability to manage them coming here by having a development that has the capacity, then we're just going to be struggling all along. You know, this is a chance to create a planned development that allows us to take care of some water issues, take care of street issues while it's being developed, instead of having piecemeal developments where there might be a house here, 2 houses there, 10 houses there. We need the houses as well, don't get me wrong, we need those developments. But if we can create a plan where we can create some capacity and manage it, that is the best thing. Rob and I have talked about this on and off from a very high level from my perspective. I didn't know the name of the developer until just recently. But his comments about the developer is that he's very committed to this community, and that property is it's very special. It's very special to the community. He knows that as well. They know that as well. So from a development perspective, I'm for it. Of course, it's private property. It's a private transaction. I guess it's up to you whether you authorize this zoning change or not, but there are next steps involved as well.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Harmon. Mr. Stevens,
Chairman
yes.
Maloney, want to point out that you do have somebody with their hand raised online.
Okay.
Before you go to that person, I do want to address Mr. Heston. We did have somebody, I believe it was late 2016, early 2017, that did look at the property for a veterans rehab type facility, and they ultimately decided to pass on it.
All right, thank you. Okay, we have someone online. Can you state your name and address, please?
Yeah, I'm Jeff Campbell over on 516 North Reynolds Avenue. And we got a letter, I guess it was last week, about this. We'd heard talk in the neighborhood. But I also, I think her name was Lisa, and concerned about the natural aspects of what's going to happen here. It looks like you're going to have to bring a lot of the utilities and stuff down Reynolds Street, and then probably go down through Cherry Street. And I haven't seen anything about how you're going to bring the utilities in, because it looks like to me it'd be torn up for a long time. And it, you know, my wife and I moved here from West Cliff, and we love the country, and this, where we live now, give us sort of a country feel, and we're going to lose that. I don't know, I just, I'd like to see it maintained as a natural open space, but anyway, thanks.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Campbell. All right, at this time, yes, yes, Brandon, Councilmember Smith.
First and foremost, I just want to thank everybody for coming and voicing their opinions. When I walked in tonight and I saw everybody that was here, when it's a city council meeting, we understand why it's busy. When it's a planning commission meeting, this is highly unlikely. I was hoping everybody was here to tell us how great of a job the planning commission was doing, but unfortunately, there is some hesitation in this. And just so you know, however the vote goes tonight, if it does go to council, this is not the end-all, be-all of this. It will go to council, and you will have another opportunity, if this does pass tonight with Planning Commission, to come to council and voice your opinion to City Council. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any further discussion from the commission or council?
May I bring up one last thing?
No, we can't.
Do you have the application?
Yes.
Do you have the application? Because the copy of the application that I have does not have the signature of the owning property.
Okay.
The property. I don't know if that's changed.
That's not something that we have anything to do with tonight,
Well,
honestly.
It does say on the application that it has to be filled out properly and correctly and
I'm-
completely. So just as a side.
Patrick, is that, I mean, are we there? Yes, okay. I'm gonna have to trust our staff that we have dotted checked all the boxes. So last but not least, Mr. Brown, as the applicant's representative, did you have anything to add to answer any of the audience's concerns in summarization style?
Yes, I won't take a lot of time. I appreciate the passion and the feedback. We as Mr. Smith mentioned, we run these types of meetings all the time and don't get any input. And so it's nice to hear the input. And many of the questions that were asked today are engineering-related questions, which will be dealt with in the major subdivision, and many of these things have to be discovered. There were two significant events that took place in the Urban Land Institute study and the HDR study, and in both cases, those were had a series of public meetings, and many people participated in those public meetings. So the feedback that was used to develop the proposal did come via feedback from the area. The sign was posted exactly as it was provided by the city of Canyon City. So the way it works is you go down to the city after your application has been accepted, and they give you a sign, and then you take that sign down and you post it. And that is exactly what we did. So there was no modification to the sign, there was no trimming it down, there was nothing like that. And then the final point is there is a provision in the application that allows the current property owner to indemnify and allow the applicant to produce, and they're not required to sign the application. So we've made every effort to be as specific as we could with the process, and have gotten great cooperation from the City of Canyon City staff to help us through that process. So we have very high level of confidence. Regardless of what you decide, the main driving factor from all of the alternate ideas is the financial feasibility of those concepts. And as I would love to see things along the lines of, a preserve, there has to be a way to take a private property owner, which many of you are, and protect their property rights to be able to sell it. And so I think that's part of this whole discussion. So keep the dialogue going. Keep the opportunities and ideas coming, and then maybe we can get to a common place. Our objective is not to force feed something to this community that they don't want. Our objective is to create a legacy project of something this community needs, drastically needs. And it will need, not just today, but for the next several decades. So that's my final comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Okay, on that note, and before I close this public hearing, just like everyone that has concerns, you all have valid questions, and we appreciate you coming out tonight and expressing those, because we don't know if you don't tell us, right? But make sure you're reaching out to the right people, city staff, FEDC, those that are involved. Like Mr. Brown just said, no one's trying to force feed anyone anything. But those are the people that can answer your questions further, and there's going to be a lot of these meetings going forward. So just please keep that in mind, and a lot of opportunity to express concerns or learn that maybe it's not a concern, or we'll learn that it is a concern. So, any additional comments from the commission? Staff? No. Okay. I now close this public hearing, and I now will call for a motion and a second on the request based upon the findings. And we did have maybe a amend about defining missing middle residential. So I need a motion and a second based on the findings.
What is the amendment what is it going to consist of? Because that'll be in the...
To define missing middle residential.
You want to go ahead and make that?
I'll make that motion
Okay.
to define that.
Do you want to make the entire motion and then with the amend? Based on the findings of facts, basically.
The four findings of fact.
The first part.
Okay, I move the planning commission adopt the first four findings of fact as stated in staff's report,
With the amendment.
with the amendment of the definition,
Missing middle.
missing middle
Residential.
residential.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Commissioner Clark, second. Any further discussion before we call roll? Denise, please call roll.
Commissioner Souther?
Aye.
Commissioner Clark?
Aye.
Chairman Maloney?
Aye.
Commissioner Clement?
Aye.
Commissioner Ledoux?
Aye.
Commissioner Moss?
Aye.
Commissioner Smith?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. I now call for a motion and a second to recommend approval to City Council.
I can make that motion. I move that the Planning Commission recommend that the City Council of the City of Canyon City approve the rezoning request for the Canyon City Commons at the Abbey Plan Development District at 2951 East US Highway 50, subject to the corrections specified to the development plan and guide as attachment B and C to the staff report.
And I would also encourage you to include definition of the missing middle section.
And include the definition of the missing middle.
I'll second.
Okay, seconded by Commissioner Smith. Any further conversation? Denise, please call roll.
Commissioner Clement?
Aye.
Commissioner Smith?
Aye.
Chairman Maloney?
Aye.
Commissioner Clark?
Aye.
Commissioner Ledoux?
Aye.
Commissioner Moss?
Aye.
Commissioner Suther.
Aye.
Okay, so it is on to City Council for the next step. Thank you, everyone, for coming. There's no other items except any discussion items. Does anyone have? It's going to get a little noisy in here.
Staff has nothing for discussion this evening, sir.
Mr. Stevens? Councilman? Then it's a wrap. We are adjourned.